Hello and welcome to another episode of Industry Insights. I'm joined today by Ben Donaghy, who works at Apollo Global Management. Ben, how are you?
I'm doing well today, and yourself?
I'm good. Thanks for joining us.
I'm happy to join.
Awesome. So you're at Apollo Global Management. Tell me a little bit about your job. What do you do? What does the firm do? And what are you expected to do on a daily basis and short-term and long-term?
So I'm a fund accountant on the business development company. It's one of many funds in Apollo Global Management, and we're a public fund. We invest mostly in debt, first lien, second lien loans. My job there, I'm a fund accountant, and my typical day is the main point of the job is to record the investments, the activity, and the interest, the income, and prepare, monthly and quarterly. We have to close our books, and the function of that is to be able to quarterly prepare a reporting for our management, as well as reporting to quarterly to the street through quarterly and yearly financial statements. Additionally, the job is to provide real-time feedback to our deal professionals who source the deals and work with the portfolio companies, and that's because that's how we generate our income, which is mostly interest income. I mean, there is some income through appreciation of the investments, but it's mostly interest income. The problems I deal with would be mostly regarding availability of data and how we receive it. So what happens is, in any situation where you're recording this kind of information, you're getting data from a few different places, and being able to record that timely and provide feedback in an amount of time that's useful to our users can be a challenge. I mean, anybody can report quarterly, right? But if you think of accounting, ideally you want to be reporting on what happened now, not what happened last month, right? Because how are our deal professionals gonna make decisions based on information that happened a month ago, right? It's not useful. So my main focus is automation of workflows to ensure that when information comes in, we can process it and turn around timely. So always trying to improve how we utilize technology and automation to make that faster.
What sort of technology and automation tools are you guys using?
So right now, there's a tool built into Excel, and also developed by Microsoft, called Power BI. BI stands for Business Intelligence. And the add-in into Excel, which we work a lot in Excel, is Power Querying. Because what I see across other funds, I used to work as an auditor, so I've seen multiple companies and how they operate. A lot of financial firms, as far as I'm aware, utilize Excel to a great degree. I mean, they have systems that they use, but ultimately their accountants populate everything to Excel. And then that's where they prepare whatever reporting or financial statements they need. So what happens is, the users attempt to utilize Excel as like a database, but it doesn't function well as a database. What Power Query allows us to do is to take standardized inputs, put them through a preset set of steps to then generate whatever the output is. And if you think about it, you're doing the same thing every month or every quarter, you're getting the same kind of input. So what happens is you just plug the new input in, it goes through your preset steps, and it comes out the way you want it to be. So instead of the accountant or auditor taking the information and doing a lot of manual work to make it presentable, all of that is already done. And so that helps streamline what I have to do, what the accountant has to do.
You mentioned that you've been at Apollo for a little bit and that you've had other experiences, specifically as an auditor. Tell us a little bit about your path to where you are now.
So in college, I wanted to do finance because I thought you could make money and it's kind of a cool job. But then I was convinced by somebody who in the accounting department saying, well, finance is great, but accounting is a lot more stable, and you can always find a job as an accountant. It's a lot less subject to the success of a particular firm, because whether you're making or losing money, you still need accountants. So I was convinced, and I started doing accounting. And then my school, St. John's University, they had this nice program where they basically shot me straight into a Big Four accounting firm. I worked as an auditor at PricewaterhouseCoopers, or now PwC is their official brand. I worked there for 2.5 years until I made senior, and I was an auditor on a hedge fund and a private equity firm. And just to really quickly, the auditor's job is to ensure that the information that the firm is putting out publicly is accurate. And I mean, one of the key steps to get me where I am today would be that discussion I had. It's very funny how you don't realize at any point in your life there could be a turning point where you make a decision that will affect the rest of the where you go. And that one dinner and that one discussion changed me from pursuing finance to good or bad to having a decent career in accounting so far, and hopefully it will continue.
Excellent. You have had experiences at a Big Four accounting firm, you're at Apollo. You mentioned working a lot in Excel. Tell me a little bit about some of the tools and then hard skills that you've had to develop to be successful. And then tell us a little bit about some of the soft skills that you've had to work on to get to where you are.
So hard skills, I can tell you at PwC, like I said, in this industry, as far as I've seen, everybody uses Excel. And I would say that you might think it's a little more advanced than it actually is. So, I mean, any firm is going to have their own system, which they use to organize data. I know all of the Big Four accounting firms have their own databases, and that's how they structure all of their work and testing, at least from an audit perspective. Tax, they do their own thing. I mean, every firm has their own software. Like even my firm has an in-house accounting system that the point of which is to take data in and organize it in a way that's useful. But what happens is that in the industry, all of the people who come out of school, I mean, at least when I was in school, and that was only 6 years ago, we did our accounting courses, but we didn't do programming, or we didn't do and the only ubiquitous technology is Excel, as far as I'm seeing, right? So you may have individuals or firms who are using other systems, but it's pretty much all Excel. And so you have people who are good at it and people who are not so good at it. And what I've found is that if you can implement automation, then it puts you out ahead of other people. Because as a first year at PwC, and I found that my managers were often asking, how do you do this basic thing? All you really need to know how to do, even take it back from Excel, what you really need to know how to do is look things up online. If you can look things up, then you can figure anything out. Because most people, they don't do that. They look at a thing, they don't know how to do it, and they're like, oh, I'm helpless now. Don't be helpless. Look it up. You can find anything online, right? So the first skill is research. Google. That's your first skill. Second skill in my industry, obviously Excel. If you can write macros using VBA in Excel, that's great. If you can do Power BI, Power Query, I highly recommend that. But beyond that, it's pretty much what your firm is going to onboard you and teach you how to use whatever system they use. But ultimately, until things change, until somebody comes along and says, okay, we're moving away from Excel, we're automating everything, and here's the new system, which I don't know if that's ever going to happen. You'll find that in this industry, people are pretty resistant to change or doing new things. So yeah, Googling, and Excel. If you know those two things, you'll be good to go. And regarding soft skills, the thing is, you can say behavioral interviews are good or bad. I would say they're not good from a psychological standpoint, just because anybody can fake an interview, right? Anybody can be good for half an hour. But what I will say is that if you can present yourself well, if you can sound competent and confident, then you're good to go. Because also, you can do the best job on what you're doing at work, but you have to also be able to look competent to the people who you're presenting to, who you're working for, and you have to also be able to sell what you're doing. You can do lots of really good things in the background, but if nobody knows, it's like you didn't do it. It doesn't matter. That's a common thing in the IT field, actually. It's the best IT guy is one who doesn't have to do anything, because that means that everything's going well, right? If everything's going well, nobody knows what you're doing. So you got to be able to, even if things are going well, you got to say, this is why what I do is so great. So really being able to present yourself without sounding like a jerk is one of the best soft skills. And also, obviously, talking to people, networking with recruiters, networking with people at the firm, because that's how you get opportunities, right? If you want to do something different or you want to move up, you got to get people to like you. You got to get people to believe that you can do things, right? So, and then for me personally, public speaking. I love getting up in front of people and public speaking, and that's the thing. Like, if you have to present to a client, you're going to be in front of a room of people who you might not know, and they're going to look at you very sternly, and they're going to be dressed very nicely, and you have to be confident to be able to stand in front of them and say what you need to say and sound confident, right? And know what you're saying, right? So everything's centered around confidence and being able to present yourself.
What's one thing that you know now that you wish you knew when you were 22?
It comes back to selling yourself, really. I mean, I know that when I first started at PwC, I was doing the best job I could, and I was making improvements to things. But what happens is it was affecting just what I do. And I found there was one time where I was talking to a partner, and he was talking about, the work product of the employees, and they were saying, well, all that matters is output. I mean, people just don't understand that there's a lot that goes into what you have to do day to day that nobody's going to appreciate, right? So what happens is you have to be able to present why what you did is so special without being too pushy. I mean, and honestly, even some people who are really pushy, they get things done. What I'll say is being quiet is probably one of the worst things you can do. I mean, you got to know when to be quiet, obviously. You can't be spouting off in front of everybody all day, every day. But you got to know when to speak up. But just doing your job, keeping your head down, you may stay where you are, but you're not going to move up.
What do you do to get better at your job? What do you do for ongoing training, professional development, things like that?
For me, and what I do as a fund accountant, it's all around just using whatever technology is, one, available, and two, will make you improve what I'm doing. I mean, there are other programs and other softwares that I'm always looking to consider, because ultimately it's like, you don't want to sit and pound at the keyboard all day, right? And if you can make that job better and faster and take, because what I would say is, like, human judgment is kind of the worst part of any process, and every time you can take judgment out of the process without sacrificing accuracy, then you should do it. So for me, it's just pushing, looking at the process and saying, okay, what parts can I substitute out? Can I take the human judgment out without making it weaker? And then if I need to learn a new skill to bridge that gap, then I go online and I look up and I figure out how to do it. And ultimately, it's all about developing those skills. Like, it's all about looking at the process and custom building a solution so that you can move it forward, right? And so a lot of that's with the Power Query stuff, but there are also softwares like Alteryx, Tableau, which I'm currently not using, but I'm always considering, right? Because these are things that they help you streamline a process, they help you build better visualization. Ultimately, what you're going to find is that you got to process data fast and you got to make it look nice, right? So whatever you need to do that, that's what you got to look into. And that's things are always that I'm considering.
So here's what I'm hearing from you. One, learn how to do the research and how to ask the right questions.
Absolutely.
Two, know how to be confident, present, and sell yourself. Mm-hmm. Three, always be open-minded to learning and customizing new solutions. If you're giving a fourth piece of advice to a 21, 22-year-old, somebody on the job hunt, what is your fourth piece, final advice?
Be a good teammate. No matter where you go, you're gonna have to work with people, right? I mean, eventually that won't be true. Everybody won't be working because everything will be automated. But until then, you have to work with people. And being a teammate who people trust and can rely on, and who people are confident in, is really valuable. I know that at my job, we had a situation. Not just one. There have been situations in the past where, you don't know what to expect of a person. And what happens is, if they can't trust you and if they can't rely on what you're going to do, you're going to get cut out of things, right? You're going to lose opportunities. And ultimately, it's just like, you want to be somebody who people can give something to and know that they're going to get it done. Because if you're not that kind of person, opportunities just dry up and doors close, so just be a good teammate.
Mm-hmm. All right, final thought, Ben. I want you to respond to this quote and take your time. Henry David Thoreau said, quote, "Success usually comes to those who are too busy to be looking for it."
That reminds me of, I don't know if it's a quote, but it's a saying that the people who are best for a job are not the people who want it. I also think about politicians in that way. It's like, people who are good at stuff, they're doing it. They're not sitting around talking about it. They're not they're actually doing what they're good at, right? And the people who are talking about what they're good at probably aren't so good at it. Initially it's going to sound like I'm weakening my point from earlier, but trust me, I'm not. If somebody's talking about how great they are all the time, right, then they're trying to make up for the fact that they're not good at the thing they're talking about. And so I guess maybe the missing piece of what I was talking about before was, you need to have the work, you need to have something that shows how good you are, because talk is great, but then you also need to have something that shows how good you are. And that comes back to the quote and saying that people who are good at something, they're always building, they're always working on it, and they're never done. I mean, you have to know when to put something down, but you can always make improvement to something, and you can always make it better. And so the people who are successful are the ones who are always making it better, right? Because if you bring your head up and you start looking out for opportunities, then that means that you feel like you've gone as far as you can where you are. But if you're successful and you can keep pushing, and then you're not looking around, you're working on that thing, you're pushing further.
Thanks for your time, Ben. I appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Once again, Ben Donaghy from Global Asset Management.